next general speaker, I had met last fall at a conference. I heard him doing a session, Carlos Hidalgo. He had a great, engaging speaking style on the important topic of content and the customer journey and how and why so many businesses fail at this endeavor and how imperative it is to pay attention. So based on our client base and the diversity here, I thought that, that this would be a great topic and serve us. So he's a great fit for our conference, and today he's bringing us his talk on how to optimize the customer experience in the digital age. So please welcome Carlos Hidalgo.
Thank you, Dee. It is great to be here. I've already seen some familiar faces. A little bit about me. It was interesting to hear Megan talk about the chatbot and their use of AI. In reality, I am a robot, an AI bot, but I am authentic, so we should have a good session. But it really is interesting to see how much we have changed as marketing. But a little bit about me. I have been in B2B marketing for over 20 years. That is hard for myself to believe. I started my journey, actually started right out of school doing nonprofit, and very quickly worked myself out of nonprofit just because it's a whole different animal, but I learned a lot. And then went to a small agency in Michigan, and then from there went to another small agency in Dallas, which does not exist anymore. But our big technology for our high-tech clients was the fax blast. So some of you, if you remember that, but that's what we did, that's what we worked with. And then from there I went to McAfee, which is now part of Intel, and then from there went to BMC Software, and then left BMC Software after being in two multi-billion-dollar businesses and thought these two companies really struggle with just tracking the viability and the path of a lead. So started a company called Annuitas, which is is now based in Atlanta. I ran that agency for 12 years, and then last February decided that it was time for me to depart that agency, kind of get my life back, and rather spending every day on airplanes and meeting rooms, that I would scale back. So we started Vism CX, which is a more full-service customer experience firm. So I am thrilled to be here. I will say, Dee, wherever you ended up, thank you so much. Your communication, the engagement was wonderful. When she and I met last October, there were two things that got me to say yes. Number one, she had me at Four Seasons, and number two, I knew she was a New York Yankee fan. So if there are any Boston fans in the room, we can talk later about why Brock Holt can't take a hard slide if you watch the highlights last night, but I do think the Yankees will be a little energized from the brawl last night. But as any good New Yorker or Bostonian would like to see, I think the rivalry is back, which is great. I do want to talk about where we are today in this very connected customer that we serve. So there is no doubt that we live in a world of constant change. So this is a real email that went out. It says, Suzanne, this is my first email, and they are now saying this is the way that we will begin communicating with each other in the future. I don't buy it, and I doubt it will last. I am a little embarrassed to say this was my first ever email in 1992 to my then girlfriend, now wife, on the orange monochrome monitor at our university, where we were, as seniors, absolutely livid that how dare they add to our tuition each semester to support this wide network, because why would anybody in their right mind need to get to the library at 12 o'clock at night and plug into that network and find all that information? So clearly I was wrong. However, I will say I have grown as an individual, and I have learned a lot since then. But this just tells you how fast we are moving, because really 1992 was not that long ago. It really wasn't. Now, granted, I talk to my kids and I'm like, well, this was before mobile phones and smartphones and Snapchat and this and that, and they're kind of like, what? They don't really understand that, but we do live in a world that is ever changing. So that impacts what we do as professionals when it comes to customer experience. Now, it's really interesting when we talk about customer experience, we are seeing a lot of chief customer officers, but in my experience and what we do at Vism, what I am finding is, by and large, a lot of CMOs have inherited the mandate of customer experience. So it is the job of marketers. And when we think about even what Megan just shared, how expansive their role is with their customers and their buyers, we have to deliver that experience. So I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many of you in your marketing roles either own fully or own part of a CX initiative in your groups, in your organizations? Wow, okay, I expected a little bit more, but unless you're just like, yeah, I just got that and I really don't want it, that's fine too. So what we have to ask is this our approach to customer experience? And it is amazing when I talk to organizations about CX, they know they have to deliver it. They know that they have to make good on this promise of CX. But then they get well, how do we really prove this? It's really, I won't say it's easy, but if you are tuned into what you're doing from a demand generation perspective, I can show you the ROI on what I'm spending from a marketing on a demand generation program. And I can say, hey, look, we spent this much, we returned this much. I can show you the ROI on what I receive back from an event. If I invest $100,000 on a big trade show, a big booth, and a speaking engagement and a party that night, I can show you that ROI based on the qualified leads I got at my booth and how many are closing based on the customer's buying cycle. Those things I can show you, but oftentimes what we're seeing is organizations are struggling to say, how do I quantify the impact to my organization based on how we're delivering customer experience? So, first and foremost, what we have to do is, believe it or not, start with the customer. And that seems really simple. Of course, you say, oh, yes, it's customer experience. We have to start with our customer and understand who our customers are and what our customers are doing. But I can tell you, in working with organizations, both mid-market and large enterprise, the number of companies that do not truly understand their customer is staggering. They don't understand how they work. They don't understand how they buy. They don't understand what they want. They don't understand what they need to deliver that experience. So first and foremost, we have to understand that customers are hyper-connected and demanding. North American consumers, 13 connected devices. Think about that, 13 connected devices. I was in a meeting the other day where one of the people at the table literally had 3 mobile phones in front of her, and then during the meeting was like checking different ones, and I finally was like, what are all those 3? Well, one was personal, one was business. I forget what the third one was. I think it was some kind of Breaking Bad initiative she had going on or something, but I was like, holy smokes, that's just mobile phones. I can hardly manage mine. But you think about that, and then we have wearables, right, where we get all of our alerts. And so 13 connected devices, the average consumer. I didn't know if this was so interesting to me or just plain sad, and I apologize for the eye chart, but it says the percentage of consumers who strongly agree they run their life from their mobile device. They run their life. Millennials, over 50% of millennials say, yes, we run our life from our mobile device. It was interesting, last year we did a college visit with my daughter, and as she was our third one going off to college, but as we were walking around the campus and checking things out, we wanted pictures of her. Well, the number of pictures we got of her like this was because she had to take the selfie in front of the fountain and post it on Snapchat, and that's the world in which we live. And if you look at even 40% of Gen Xers say, yes, we run our lives from our mobile devices. And so the fact that we are so digitally connected changes everything. And then because of this, we're so demanding as consumers. I want a response within 6 hours of posting to a social channel. If I post to your brand, if I post to your Twitter handle or to your Facebook page, I want a response. I'm not just putting it out there to complain, although we'll show some examples here. And by the time I show those examples, you're going to be like, that Carlos is a little bit of a diva. But, and that'll make more sense when you see some of my tweets. However, this is how we communicate now. It's not. We were at dinner with friends the other night, and we were talking about an incident that happened when my now 21-year-old son was about 6 months old. And one of our friends at dinner said, yeah, if that had happened now, you would have instantly gone to Twitter. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Or you would have posted it on Facebook for all of your friends to see. And so as brands, as marketers who are going to be, if you're not already, you're going to be pushed into how do we deliver a true great customer experience. This is something we have to think about. So when I talk about the digital mobility, there we go. So I'm an avid Twitter user. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. Because if I wanted to keep in touch with you back in high school, we would have done so long before those platforms ever came out. But I use Twitter for a lot of things. I use it to dispense information. I use it to rant about the Yankees when we're not playing well. I use it to talk about marketing. But I also use it as a way to try to get customer service's attention. So this was just recently, March 15th, at Garmin, more than 3 days since I contacted you and no response. Remember that? I want a response in 6 hours. At least most consumers do. Pretty bad CX. Now that I live in CX, that's a moniker you can use a lot. We've been in restaurants, I'm like, this is a bad CX, right? And my wife's like, please just keep it to ourselves. I don't want anybody spitting in my food. May need to look at another vendor for replacement. Now what's interesting is I had sent them an email to their support, so I followed their process. When did I get the attention? When I sent this tweet. They responded back to me and were like, oh, hey, what's going on? And so we fixed that. United Airlines is actually my number one. I know every time the poor people who monitor the United social channel, they're sitting there going, oh, damn it, Carlos is tweeting again. So had the attendant light on for 20 minutes. This actually just happened not long ago. And this really happened. 20 minutes, 3 attendants walk by. And I finally say, hey, I finally have one stop. Actually, he came in and just turned off my light and kept walking. And I was like, excuse me. And I said, hey, this is, I don't really understand what's going on here. We've been sitting here forever. This is a really bad customer experience. At least you could update us. And literally his response was, write the company. And he walked away. And I was like, oh, all right. I mean, granted, I wasn't dragged out of my seat. I didn't have my puppy die in the overhead. So I was rather fortunate. And then again, same flight. Hey, you never disappoint. This is a continual head scratching when flying you. Now, what's interesting is I never got a response from United. They used to respond. I think if you can have a Twitter blacklist as a company, I think I'm on United's. But when you live in Colorado, you really don't have a whole lot of choices. But they didn't respond. However, one of the flight attendants came by and apologized for the bad experience. So I don't know if they were getting relayed in the air or what was going on. And then you have this one on Facebook. Hey, Delta, what's up with this trip? My luggage didn't make it. So this is now, as consumers, both in B2C and B2B, oftentimes how we're going to communicate. I had a client who was in the customer contact center space. And they had spent an inordinate amount of money on what the CMO said was a social media strategy. So we were like, great. So we went to one of their big user groups, and we started interviewing their customers to get insight onto what channels do you use to collect information to make an informed buying decision. We were doing a demand generation strategy. What was interesting is every one of their customers of their product that they use in a contact center, so a lot of these folks were support desks and help desks and so on, not one person said social media. So I was like, well, that's really interesting. You're putting a lot of money into social media. Your customers aren't saying social media. So we started to ask the question. The responses we got, the vitriol that these people had for social media, and what they kept saying is we hate social media and we don't use it ourselves because it's the number one way people use to complain. It is the number one way. And the one guy got red in the face, and I was kind of like, whoa, slow down. First day on the nicotine patch, relax. And I just said to him, I said, why don't you? And he said, it's just another channel we have to respond to. And if we don't do it quickly, we get dinged. That's the world in which we live. We have a very demanding, very engaged consumer. So when we talk about customer experience, I think it's highly important that we define what we mean when we say this. And I love this definition by Adam Richardson, the Harvard Business Review. And people have said to me, well, how come you don't have your own definition? Really, the best marketing is stealing. So I thought, let's just do this. Let's just give Adam the credit. The sum totality of how customers engage with your company and brand, not just a snapshot in time, but throughout the full arc of being a customer. So I was reading a report yesterday on the plane ride down here, and it was by Gartner, and it was interesting to me that they really talk about customer experience, about buying and then past buying. Well, what happens before I buy something? If I have a really bad engagement with your brand, the chances of me actually including you in a buying cycle decrease dramatically. And so I really think the most important thing we have to think there is that full arc of being a customer. We also have to understand that CX is center stage for an organization. It is becoming the thing that companies are competing on. 72% of B2B organizations state they will focus on customer experience. That's by Forrester. We see that 75% expect a good customer experience when they interact with your brand. So this is pre-purchase, during purchase, post-purchase. This whole idea of customer loyalty is going away really, really fast. There are about 2 or 3 brands that I would say I am an advocate for because of the good experience that I get through their brand, and that is Apple, that is REI, and that is Subaru. Subaru is partly because if you live in Colorado, it's actually in the state constitution, you have to own at least one. So I'm kind of forced into that one. And then 86% of customers who have a great customer experience are likely to repurchase versus only 13%. So when we're talking about value, when we're talking about increasing the bottom line for our companies, if we can produce a great customer experience, how likely is it for our customers to repurchase or purchase more from us? And then I love this stat by Walker Group that says by 2020, which obviously is not that far in the future, customer experience will supplant price and product as the number one thing that we look at when we purchase. So think about that. Think about all the different touch points that we're having with our customers. And so we have to make it count. Because honestly, you can have a great experience with a brand, and it may only take one real lousy experience for you to say, I'm out. Why? Because at the end of the day, because we're so connected, because we're so demanding, because we live in this just-in-time society, we all have an inner diva that we expect things from the brands that we work with. We expect not to wait. We expect not to have to put our information in multiple times just to get the help that we need. How many of you would rather use a chat window on a support site versus call somebody up on the phone? All right? That's what I want to do. I want to be on chat all day long. I don't want to talk to somebody. I don't want to have to go through and be like, oh, well, what's your password? What's the code on your password? What's the code on your code? I don't know. You guys require so much shit, I can't remember it. That's not a good customer experience. However, we have to make it count, and I would encourage you, if you're in your organization talking to your C-level, or if you're a C-level trying to get your colleagues around this idea, please use this next slide. And if you want these slides after, just give me your card and I'll make sure we email them to you. But I'm not going to read all of this, but Harvard Business Review did this fascinating study where they looked at transaction-based companies and also subscription-based. And so the transaction-based, they saw that good customer experience, 140% increase in spend. How many of you would love to tell that to your CEO? Hey, if we invest, Megan's back there going, yep, that's me. If we invest the right way and deliver a great customer experience, we're going to see an increase of 140%. And then subscription-based, 74% chance of remaining a member for at least another year. And in fact, those that had a good customer experience, we see there that it increases dramatically. So I was with an organization not long ago where we were talking about this. They're subscription-based. And I said, okay, so in terms of delivering good CX, what would this mean? And the sales ops person said, if we could just add $10,000 to each subscription renewal every year, we would drive incrementally $40 million for our business. I said, that is fantastic. I got super excited. I was like a junior high girl at a Bieber concert. I got so excited. And I said, great, let's start there. And then he sat back. He said, good luck figuring out who our customers are. Staggering. And then I said, well, why not like take some investment and we'll start there. And they said, oh, well, no, we wouldn't get that. So I'm sitting there going, you're going to drive 40 million incrementally, but you're not going to invest to get that 40 million. And meanwhile, we sat in the room and they talked about how we're losing customers because they can't identify them and therefore they can't deliver the experience. So we have this idea of traditional thinking that all we have to do is provide customer experience is just providing good service, right? I have to make you successful as a customer. So if you buy my product or if you buy my service or if you buy whatever I sell, if I just make you successful with it, voila, we have great customer experience. And this was some really interesting research done by CEB, now Gartner. And I was with them not long ago where we started to walk through this. And if you've ever read any of Brent Adamson's stuff, I think he is an absolute genius, and the research they do is fantastic. So they went out and they interviewed salespeople and said, what is it that is going to help you grow and or retain your customers? And of course it was, I just have to provide great service. This is what I strongly agree with. If I provide good service as a company and as a salesperson, we're going to deliver great experience. We're going to have happy customers who stay with us and become advocates, and that's really what we want. However, what they really showed was this. If I am the incumbent and I want to box out the competition, what I have to do is I have to show you how to improve. It is no longer good enough, either on the consumer side or on the B2B side, to just deliver a product and a service. I have to show you and help you improve your business outcomes for me now as a consumer to say, I will buy from you again. I will do this. And again, I'm not saying this is going to apply to every single scenario. If you sell a packaged good in a retail store, can you really help improve life? I would say some of you can. With some of the connected devices we have in our homes, if you have any kind of Nest thermostat or Ring security systems, things like that, I would say that's helping you improve where you are in terms of your life. So I would say not everyone, but I even think in some of the retail chains or retail brands that this would definitely apply. But I thought this was really important. So we have to take this traditional line of thinking of we just need to provide great service. And as brands start to think about how do we actually help our customers improve. And so what we have to do then is that idea of this full arc, how do we implement that? And when we think about this, I believe that it starts with a brand engagement. We have consumers, we have buyers who are engaging with our brands all the time, either on social media, they're walking by our displays, they're seeing our ads in the Wall Street Journal, they're watching our commercials, they're receiving our direct mail, whatever it would be, and they're engaging with our brands. If that is a bad experience, guess what? You're not going to have the opportunity, most likely, to engage them further and talk to them or have them come look at you about your product. You're not going to have the opportunity to engage with them during their buying process, which is always very self-driven, on and on and on. What we really want to be able to do is create customer advocates. I had dinner last night with a partner who was a vendor of mine that I started using 18 years ago, based here in Austin. And we were kind of trying to figure out, like, how long have we been working together? And we started talking about this, and I said, Dustin, at the end of the day, I'm an advocate for your brand. Because when my clients say, hey, who do you use that does this? My first response is KPI analytics. And I go, this is the third company that they are at, but it's the same group that I have followed, and they have followed me. And so they started with this idea long before anybody started talking about CX. They started with this idea of, if we help you improve at the business you're in, which at that time was at McAfee, if we help you improve, we're going to continue to win your business. And now they've created an advocate. So what we have to understand is that we are digital creatures. So this is more CEB research. And again, this was primarily done through the buying process. But when we went through this and I asked Brent, I said, do you have this across the full arc of the customer journey? He said, it's basically the same. And when we start to look at the digital behavior of buyers, and when we start to look at the digital engagement that occurs, it's constant. So this idea, when salespeople, especially in the B2B world, if sales says to you, I don't want you to engage my customers because we're in a sales cycle, guess what? Their customers are engaging online anyway. They're going to the website, they're consuming information. And so we have to adapt to this digital way, but unfortunately, when it comes to marketing, sometimes we do this. And somebody along the line, somebody wrote this must have written this really compelling piece at one point that said, hey, let's practice disruptive marketing. Anybody here like to be disrupted? I hate it. Absolutely despise disruption. If I'm heads down working on something and my phone rings and I don't recognize the number, I'm so irritated, like almost, how dare you call me? I am working, right? We don't like disruption, but this is the approach we take often. We get our email systems and our marketing automation platforms and we blast emails out to unsuspecting customers. And so really, marketing automation in Latin often stands for spam cannon. Or better yet, we tell our salespeople to go social sell. And then we say, hey, go use LinkedIn to social sell. And then make a connection with somebody and ask them to be part of your network. And as soon as they accept, ask them for 30 minutes of their time so they can see the latest and greatest demo, because our software is the greatest thing ever. That's a really bad brand, a really bad customer experience. And so the trouble is, and the reason we're struggling, is also according to CEB, the majority of companies are not confident in their ability to transform digitally. And so if we are going to respond to a digital customer with a solid CX approach, we have to adapt. We have to get the skill set. We have to get the training to adapt to that. So where does CX start? I talked about the customer. I talked about understanding the customer. I'm a big fan of customer journeys, and I believe there's a session on that. We could spend, that little arc I showed you, we could spend an entire session just on talking about the arc. I'm actually giving a workshop next month in Sydney simply about customer journey mapping and all of that, because I think it's vitally important. But as we were putting together the plans to launch Vision CX, and as I was talking to colleagues and talking to other marketers, it really became apparent to me that the first place CX starts is internally, is understanding and enabling CX in your company. And so this is educating our employees across all the touch points on the brand promise of what we deliver. I talked with one person who was a vice president of marketing, and I said, Amy, what is your company's brand promise? She said, I have no idea. She said, in fact, out of our 6 top-level executives, if you put them all in a room, I would bet you that they would give you 6 different answers. And she said, so we truly have no idea. We have no idea what kind of experience we want to create based on what we say we can do as a brand. So I think one of the best examples of this is Apple. I told you I was an Apple advocate, so now I'm proving it. And so when you think about Apple, they have this idea internally of think different. If you listen to their CEO, Tim Cook, he will talk about the DNA of the company is innovation. They actually have words that they restrict internally. One of those words is limits. You're not allowed to use the word limits when talking about a new product concept or a new campaign or anything like that. They restrict it. And Tim Cook will say that word's not even in our DNA because we think different. And every Apple employee knows this, down to the person who is at the Genius Bar in the brick and mortar store. And if you go online, if you go to their support, if you go to their support forums, if you use their products, if you go into their brick and mortar, it is an unbelievable customer experience. Now, recently they've taken some PR hits with the throttling down of the batteries. There's also a story of, hey, we're waiting too long in line. But by and large, they respond to that in the best possible way they can, and they respond quickly. So you have to enable that. Secondly, we have to then equip CX in our organizations. First of all, we have to create the right culture. So this doesn't mean that the customer is always right, but it does mean the customer is always first. So this idea that content is king or this is king, the customer is king and always has been king and always will be king if you want to succeed in the new world in which we live. Then we have to provide the right tools. We have to bring our systems of record and systems of engagement together into a system of intelligence. And so what I see in organizations is this bifurcated view of the customer because we have a customer support system, a marketing automation system, a CRM system, our analytics system, our fulfillment system, our finance system. And none of these systems talk to each other. And so my prospective client who said, good luck finding out who the real customer is, I'm sure many of you in this room can say, yeah, I kind of understand that. I get where they're coming from. So how do we deliver if, first of all, we don't understand our brand, and then secondly, we don't understand or have the ability to get a full view of the customer? And then we have to empower CX. We have to let our employees act on behalf of the brand. And I think one of the best brands that does this and does it almost better than anybody is Zappos. And if you've ever read stories about what their customer support people do on the phone, well, they will have 50-minute conversations with people that is not about shoes, but they just recognize and they have empathy and saying, this person just needs a voice. This person just needs a conversation. We are going to do that. And guess what? That person becomes a customer. They do that because they trust their training and they don't have to go and ask permission of somebody to go above and beyond when it comes to the customer. So, a day in the life of CX digitally. Again, this is a real-life example. So, a couple years ago, spring break, go down to Tampa to see my beloved Yankees in spring training with my family. We go to check in. It's myself, my wife, and two of my children who are not in college yet. We show up. It's about 9 o'clock at night, and they said, Mr. Hidalgo, thank you for your loyalty. We have you, and we've got your room set, and it's one king. It's a little weird. I've got my wife and two children. Did I tell you that? So I know family bed worked in Willy Wonka. It doesn't work for the Hidalgo clan. So I said to the woman, I said, well, that's not going to work. I actually reserved two kings. She said, well, we're all full. There's nothing else I can do. I said, well, that's very interesting because this isn't going to work. At that point, my wife was like, you know what, kids, why don't we just let Dad handle this? So I said, no, I need two kings. And I said, I'm actually a little surprised at your response, given my loyalty to the Marriott brand. And she said, well, there's nothing else I can do. You're just going to have to deal with it. When your last name ends in a vowel, that's not a way to speak to somebody. So we went back and forth, and then I was told, and we can't even bring a rollaway bed. Thankfully, my children, especially my youngest son, being the youngest, he's rather feral, so he's like, I'll just sleep on the floor. I'm like, okay, great. So we figured out the first night. But anyway, I went out and I sent this tweet. I sent a tweet, got on, sent a tweet, and then I responded, and you can see that I was in a pretty bad mood where I ascribed the word snot to the woman at the front desk. And again, I promise I'm not this Beyonce in my regular life, but the best thing is though that Marriott responded and said, hey, thank you for the additional details. We're truly sorry. We will take care of this. This is all digitally. I don't know who I'm talking to except Sarah. I don't know who Sarah is. Sarah's somewhere managing the corporate Twitter handle. I got a call about 3 days later, because from Tampa we went to some friend's place down in Florida. It was the general manager of the hotel that we stayed at in Tampa and said, could you please recount for me the story? So I told her, and she said, first and foremost, let me tell you, I am so sorry That is not the Marriott experience we want you to have. So she took her hotel and assigned it to the parent brand. And she said, I've looked at your profile. I see the loyalty. This isn't what we expected. I also noticed that a lot of out of the 3 nights you booked on points, I put 180,000 points back in your account. She said, and next time you're in Tampa, I hope you will give us another chance to prove to you that Marriott can deliver, and it's on us. So you tell me, I had a really bad customer experience, but you tell me, at the end of the day, am I still going to be loyal to these guys? Absolutely, because as demanding as we are, we should also know that, and I think most customers realize, hey, we are people, we all make mistakes. So maybe the lady, aka Snot, at the desk was just having a bad night. Maybe I was like number 10 demanding customer in a row, and the bourbon had run dry, and she just had had enough. But that response to me shows Marriott cares about CX. So as I wrap up, and I apologize I'm a little bit over, but what can we do today as organizations to say it's no longer about just generating demand? While demand is part of CX, we have to go beyond that. It's no longer about just having a customer success team that shows me all the features and functions of the software I bought, or how to best use whatever service I've delivered or whatever product I delivered from the consumer perspective. First of all, we have to measure our customer experience maturity. If you say how to do that, shoot me an email, look me up on Twitter. We have one that we can send to you in a PDF, and it just gives you some qualitative things you can kind of check off a list and say, yes, no, this is about where we are. We have to enable, equip, and empower our organizations for customer experience. If your employees on the front lines, from marketing, sales, professional services, customer support, don't understand your brand promise, it's going to be really hard to deliver an experience. Because most likely you're going to be delivering an experience that your brand promise can't back up. We have to embrace digital transformation at every level. So that means on our website, I loved what Megan was saying, where she just went through and started to check some things out. From our social media perspective, if your customers are on social media. Some of you may live in industries where, hey, you know what? Your customers aren't really digitally advanced. If that's the case, good for you, but you can also help your customers improve by going there. Encourage our employees to act on the behalf of the customer. Identify what your customers want. Get understanding of your customers, not just the journey, but who's involved in the journey, at what stage of the journey, who's using your product versus who's purchasing your product, so on and so forth. And then continually optimize the experience. So I would love to continue to talk more about this. Very passionate about it. It's what we do on a day-to-day basis for all of our clients. There's my contact details. And I do not know if we have time left for questions, but I know we're heading into a break. I'll be milling about, but I'm going to turn it back over to Dee. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions they want to ask Carlos?
If not, that means I covered everything perfectly, and you're all CX experts. Yes? Yeah, so the question was, what is a good way to measure customer experience? I look at a few things. I look at customer retention, number one. I look at the expanse of what I call customer wallet. So out of our current customer base, did they buy more product? Did they buy more service? And then understanding the why behind that. And then there's NPS scoring, right? Which it kind of gives you a high-level view of that Net Promoter Score. But for me, I'd rather know you either love us, you're going to recommend us, or you won't recommend us. What scares me of NPS is the passives. I could take you or leave you. Those are the ones you want to really zero in on and figure out, why are you passive? And then surveying and asking those questions of, why are you still with us? Did we help you improve, or did we just help you succeed? There's a fine line, but there is a difference. Anybody else? Yes.
There's just filling an order, and then there's wowing the customer.
Yes.
So how do
Yeah, so the question / statement was there's a difference between just fulfilling an order and actually wowing, what CEB talks about delighting a customer. I'll give you a real live example. We worked with a client that was in the long-term care insurance space. And so when a application would go to underwriting, some of the feedback they got from their customers was, I have no idea what's going on. All I get is, it's an underwriting. What does that mean? I don't, are there additional information? And there was no email follow-up. So we actually created for them what we called internally the domino counter. So if you've ever ordered pizza from Domino's and you can go online and see the little ticker that says, oh, it just got put in the oven, so you better leave your house. So we actually started to do that, and the customers could log in and start to see the progress of their application as it went through the underwriting process and be better informed, and their customer satisfaction and customer experience scores went up significantly because now people had knowledge. So instead of just fulfilling the order and saying, hey, it's an underwriting, you're approved, it was actually more detailed and more in line with the customer expectations. So I think in order to delight our customers, we have to ask them, okay, so from the cash to order to fulfillment process, what is your ideal experience? How would you like to be communicated with? Because too often we come up with these ideas that, hey, this would be great, and it falls flat when we bring it out to our audience. So that's why we have to understand from our customer what would delight them, and then start to put in the process and the programs to bring that to them on a day-to-day basis. I think we have time for one more. Well, thank you very much. And again, I want to thank Merit Direct for having us. Enjoy the rest of your conference.